So High with Kath and Nath.
Sorry.
Oh, hi, Kath.
Hi, Nath.
How are we?
Oh, you know what? I feel pretty good.
I don't.
Uh-oh.
Which I mean, standard for me.
Okay.
So,
Start at the beginning. Don't leave anything out.
no, nothing. So, one of my favorite pastimes is picking up Facebook Marketplace items for my wife.
Oh no.
My kids aren't going to listen to this, so I can spoil it. My daughter's been into American Girl, as I've shared with you
Yes.
in work. My wife enjoyed them when she was a kid, so now passed down some of her dolls to our daughter, and now she's collecting yada yada yada.
Right.
She needs obviously a very large doll house to house these dolls.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. I was initially tasked with building one, which I got really excited about, but then of course with the cost of lumber, we're like, well, maybe we can find one that's already assembled. So my wife's been on Facebook Marketplace trying to find one, and she did. Out in Gettsville. So we packed up the Benson family truckster and took the car seats out, and my wife and I headed out there to get it. It was pretty large. It was just gonna fit in the SUV we have, and but I would have needed her help because it was large. And what I thought was like either plastic or maybe like MDF or just like lightweight kind of crap IKEA would. It was a homemade dollhouse that was 75 inches tall, 50 inches wide, and 24 inches deep. Pretty big. And was made with 3/4-inch plywood, which is not light at all. So this 4-foot plus monstrosity weighed about 220 pounds.
Okay.
That we had to deadlift, flip on its side, and then try to get into the family truckster. Spoiler alert, it did not fit in the family truckster.
No.
And as I'm lifting it, I hear everything in my back crack because I'm 1,000 years old.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, ugh. So the next morning I wake up and I'm just like, oh, I feel like I've been hit by a bus. Like, I just like, this is not good. I go to walk my kids down to the bus with my wife. I'm walking down the stairs. My right leg and my back give out completely.
Oh no.
I fall to
That's
the
all
ground.
a lot of things.
I fall to the ground slowly, not like, sack of potatoes, more like a very dramatic, just melting away. Just,
You're like a Victorian lady fainting down the stairs.
My daughter's mortified. Dad, are you okay? I'm like, yep, fine. Dad's fine. Just Dad's back hurts. Just keep walking to the bus.
Please don't look at me.
The best part,
don't retain this as a memory,
which I'll share with you, the Ring doorbell caught the whole thing. So you just see this large man slowly crumbling, the weight of his back.
Is this going to be an extra feature that people can watch online?
Yeah, subscribe to our Patreon and you can see a grown man fail.
Oh.
So that's what's going on in the Benson home. How's everything with you?
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah. Facebook Marketplace. That's what they don't tell you about the marketplacing. All the residual pain will be in.
You know what's interesting? It reminds me of my father's cousin who lived in Lakewood, and we used to go visit her house, and she and her husband had made a dollhouse, and it actually hung on the wall. So it was on the wall and you could open it up so that you could see the inside. But he was a real craftsman, so he had made all the furniture. And she was an artist, and so she painted all the pictures on the walls, and it had electricity, and it was the most elaborate thing I've ever seen. Who knows whatever happened to it? They are long gone, no longer with us. But it was just it was incredible, and I always wonder whatever happened to that beautiful house.
It reminds me. You mentioned like just all obviously the work that went into that. And while I dabble in woodworking, I'm not at that level whatsoever. I could have built a nice little 4-up for her, but there was not going to be electricity in it for sure.
Well, and the idea of making things on that scale, that small, too, is really, it's really incredible.
Hate the patience involved in that, because the second like I do something in the wood splits, I'm just like rah, 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 rah. Jen shouting on, "This is supposed to be therapeutic." I'm like, it's not.
It's not helping.
Not helping.
That's the problem with things like that, though. Anything like that you're trying to do as therapeutic, eventually it's frustrating, and maybe that is part of the therapeutic part of it. I don't know.
I mean, saying how your father's cousin they did all this work reminds me of like the article I just saw about to the effect of millennials and blah 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 don't know how to DIY and craft and do this that. I'm like, I literally picked up woodworking because I wasn't taught shop class. Like, how can you say I don't know how to? I can change plumbing in my house. I don't do it with electricity though. My dad's an electrician. I'll let him do it. I
feel like electricity is the thing that you should not be. That's not a DIY situation.
No, I do not. Why is what I do not.
So you're a millennial, correct?
I was born in 85.
Okay.
And it's that weird cusp of I'm not Gen X. I'm an elder or what they call it, the kids are calling a geriatric millennial.
Millennial?
Yeah. Or as my daughter said, "Dad, you were born in the 1900s."
No, I don't like that.
Don't like that. But
it
is hysterical though, because like she's not wrong. I was born in 1900s, but if I say the 1900s to you, you instantly think, oh, the Titanic. Or,
again, old-timey Victorian lady,
large, big bicycle wheel, tiny wheel. Yeah, that's
the 1900s.
Yeah, that's the 1900s. But technically, I was born in the late 1900s. And just like, and that came about, but even before I saw the memes about that on the gram, my daughter was watching a movie, The Three Ninjas, amazing. Was watching The Three Ninjas and she goes, "Dad, why don't movies look like that anymore?" And I go, "Look like what?" "From like the 1900s, when you were born." I'm like, geez, like stab me in the heart.
It's like everything in the 70s and 80s was just sort of brown, yellow, maybe some blue in there occasionally, but that's about it.
Blue, yeah. But no, I'm a geriatric millennial, but I mean, I should be a Gen Xer because like I feel forgotten. I feel.
Well, it feels glorious. I am a Gen Xer.
Yeah.
Born in 1974. Mm-hmm. So I am your elder.
You are.
By a bit.
Elder Kate.
By a bit. A wizened crone by most standards. Yeah. But it's interestingly, my friend and I were discussing recently about people our age. Mm-hmm. And how we feel like we fit more in the elder millennial category,
right,
compared to some people our age. Because and this was based strictly on Facebook. Sometimes we look at people our age and we're like, "What are you doing out there?" What? They seem old to us.
Yeah, and like I'm 37, so yeah, I'm 37. So
yep, there it is.
There's the maths. I look at, and I said this on episode 1, I'm just like, well, my dad didn't watch cartoons at 37. He worked in a steel mill. So there's that. I feel guilty about watching animation. But there's I look at people, I saw a group of UB students the other day, and they looked old to me. I'm like, well, they're old. I'm like, Nate, you're double their age. Like,
yeah, it's wild.
Like I'm the old man. Like, so I either look like 1,000 years old to them, or I have a weird, like, I certainly don't act as old as I should. But then, yeah, I tend to lean like in terms of like sympathizing with like people your age, like in the struggle of being like of that Gen X kind of ilk, and like because I'm on the cusp of like I grew up without internet, but then I also had the internet. I remember 4 channels, but I also remember when we got cable. Like there's that gap where I saw everything.
I think it's interesting because, and I didn't know whether it was because I grew up with sisters my sisters are 8 and 11 years older than I am. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know, we were talking about this the one day on the show, that I remember my sisters giving me their albums when they were done playing, listening to them. And I was probably the only first grader listening to the Allman Brothers on a little record player that
Yeah.
looked like it was made of denim on the outside, like one of those things. But I was always interested in getting older and working with people who were younger than me, not knowing really anything prior to their own experience of life, whether it was TV or music or anything. And I was like, was I like that? Because I wasn't around for certain things, but I know that they happened.
Yeah, right.
Prior to my existence.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. I don't know. I enjoy being forgotten. I don't understand why, like the Gen Z, they're so sassy to the millennials, and it makes me laugh. It's really funny. I'm like, listen, go ahead, you guys, pluck your eyebrows, do it all, because it's going to come back.
Call me when you're 30.
It's fun. I like being older. It's so great because you just watch all the chaos going on and you just think, listen, it's going to just get different. It's not going to really get any better, but you're going to have
it's going to be the same version of itself over and over again. The simulation, that's, what we live in, obviously. It's just going to keep, playing that rerun over and over, just change it just enough to be different. Yeah.
Well, I like talking to my mom about things sometimes because she was a teenager, young 20s in the 50s, the mid to late 50s. Yeah. And so she'll say things like, she said, you know what? All these people talk about wanting to go back to the 50s and blah, blah, blah. She goes, I'll tell you what, I was around then. Wasn't that great? And it's just funny, that idealized version of, people think that it was the Beaver Cleaver world.
Yeah. When in reality, it was like a probably a more warped version of, what we saw in Mad Men, where it was not maybe on the surface, it was like the Cleaver family, but not behind the door.
Yeah, well, right. And also there's a big difference between that is a fictional television show.
Yeah. Nothing's real about that. Yeah.
It was real.
Of course, it gives you that false sense, right? It gives you like, oh, that's clearly what it was like. And we've done this in our society of like, we go all in as if the entertainment we watch was like fact.
Yes. Well, that's how it used to be.
Yeah.
It's kind of like there's not to get into like some heavy conversation, but it's like when people talk about, well, my grandmother, they stayed married for 75 years. It's like, well, yeah, because during a good portion of their marriage, she wasn't allowed to have a credit card, so it's like,
let alone a driver's license, a bank account.
So some of that is like, it's not romantic.
I mean, it's a necessity.
Certainly, certainly it was for some people, but in a lot of ways, there was some really practical reasons why things happened the way that they happened and were the way that they were.
Yeah, they gloss over that in the. Oh well.
Mostly though, I look forward, which I already enjoy. I enjoy a rocking chair immensely, and I am ready. I'm just ready to sit on my porch, yell for everyone to get off my lawn, and just live my life. That's it. Yeah.
It's funny how going on a vacation, or which that's the whole point of vacation, right? Doing something that you're not able to do every day.
Yes.
But just like when we recently went to Myrtle Beach, like I made a point to get up and watch a sunrise and over the ocean every morning.
Yeah.
And just sit there. I have no desire to sit on my porch at 5 a.m. here in Kenmore. Even with like a wave machine, it's like, this isn't going to work for me. But
it takes a while, I feel like, to get comfortable in being on vacation. Yeah. They're not really long enough. By the time you're halfway through, you're just starting to chill out a little bit. Yeah. And then it's time to go back.
Yeah. 2 weeks is too long, at least with, when you got like a family and like, you've got to kind of do all that thing. But like, to your point, like a week is not long enough either. Cause it's like by day 4, you're like, oh, and then you're like, oh, I have to drive back home.
Right. I gotta get it. You gotta do the laundry. You gotta get everything ready and get back into life again.
Oh, this trip's becoming expensive because Nate's buying more appetizers than he needs.
I very much though, and I just don't care. I very much have made my life in a way where I'm trying not to be stressed out. Yeah. Or I think what's the book, The Fine Art of Not Giving Up,
Yeah.
But which I honestly did not even get through that whole book because I got the idea.
Yeah.
kind of was the same theme. I felt like
Yeah,
throughout.
just don't give an F. Got it.
Right. But it's like caring about the right things
Right.
and not freaking out about everything, which I think that's great.
Well, especially with this whole, in the last month or two, there's been the conversation about quiet quitting, right? And which is the dumbest term ever. And if I've ever heard a marketing PR guy's, workshopped term in my life, it's quiet quitting. Like we've all been doing it. It's just called doing your job and not like
Yes.
above and beyond. But anyway, there is like to the point of that. It's just like I have been really working hard of just like, listen, there are things that happen professionally that I can't control because it's not my job to control it. So I really shouldn't care.
Yeah.
So just go do the thing they want you to go do and then be done with it and not worry about what somebody else is doing or what somebody else isn't doing. It's like, as long as I'm doing my thing, it's getting on the air and, I'm making that Facebook post, then boom, like that's all I have to focus on. There's no reason to be freaking out, getting stressed out for things that in the grand scheme of things don't matter at all to my career.
I feel the same way. And I don't feel bad about it. And what's interesting is that I feel like some people don't like that.
Yeah.
And you think, who cares? I'm doing what I need to do.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I can't be bothered to care about all this other stuff. It makes me exhausted.
Yeah. And I'll put my work up against networks. I mean, I do what I do quite well. And I certainly, how I choose to care about things or not care about things isn't impacting the job. So again, who cares?
Yeah, I think that's great. I put my work up against any college kid who's blown off their group project for 3 weeks and shows up and kills it.
Yeah.
In the classroom.
Nailed it. A+. That was not me in the group. That was not me, but that's a whole different story. So you got to interview in Idol, maybe not Idol, but some of that, I think you certainly, well, I forgot words. You got to interview somebody.
I got to interview Keith Morrison. There was an availability.
Yes.
Because Dateline, which apparently Dateline is the longest running program at night. I don't know.
It's like something very specific. Like it's the longest running episodic docudrama crime analysis program on TV.
I mean, there's
9 and 10.
Dateline, the OG of true crime.
Yes.
And we had the opportunity to interview Keith Morrison, who is, well, I think in the hierarchy of Dateline, he's at the top of correspondence.
Obviously.
I think most people that I know who are my friends so we also have the same weird sense of humor. We all get along. We all agree that if we were in the position of having a Dateline episode based on our demise, Keith Morrison is the person that you want telling everyone.
Right. Yeah. That's when you know, like this is a big story because they pulled out Keith for the full episode, not just an intro.
And you know what I feel bad about if your story's half an episode, those halvesies. Oh
yeah. They're filling their requirement. They got to get something on there.
I know. I want the 2 hour, don't watch alone. Super episode.
All the lights are on. Have your bestie on speaker. Like, oh my god.
So we had the opportunity to chat with him, and it's one of those things where he's talking to stations all over the country, and I think he might live in California. At least I think his Twitter bio says that he's in California. But he was in New York for the Today Show, so he'd been up for the Today Show. We interviewed him around 2:30 in the afternoon. And it's kind of a weird thing. And you're trying to be like, okay. So I didn't know if it would be like, hello, Buffalo or something. It was just kind of like, okay, go ahead. So I was like, oh. So I just started and I felt like it was a weird, awkward start. And I wanted to start by saying to him, because my friends, two of my girlfriends were like, are you going to tell Keith Morrison we love him? And I was like, absolutely. I'm going to tell Keith Morrison that we love him, because I think that's such a big part of who he is that there are people who adore him. I love following Keith Leans on Things. on Instagram because
Great account.
he always does the lean.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of like Dateline producers, I think, who are involved in that account. So they'll be like, vintage lean or whatever. And so he has like this whole persona that I think is so interesting. But the other thing I really like about him is he has these moments with the people he interviews. And I was trying to find it on my phone and I couldn't find it. But there was a woman who was talking about a party and how they had made Jello shots. And he's like, Jello shots. And so she explains what Jello shots are. And he goes, oh.
Oh my.
Oh, Jello shots.
Oh.
And so.
And it was the Jello shots that turned dark.
Yeah.
Night. And
it makes people laugh, or he talks to the people, who, and that's the thing. It's like people love this show, but it's literally about people being murdered, which is, which the whole true crime, we are all a mess. But anyway, but he'll talk to people and you understand who this person was beyond being a missing person or a crime victim or something like that. Like he is so good at saying, they were a real jokester. And the people, you see them lighten up and have that opportunity to be able to talk about the person that they loved in a way that isn't the horrible details of, whatever happened to them. And he also said something really interesting, because I brought that up with him. And he also talked about, the perpetrator. He said, some of these people, they have friends and they have loved ones and they did, had great lives and did all kinds of great things and were good people. But for one moment or for one thing that happened in their lives that sort of started to unravel. So I thought that was interesting. But I wanted to talk to him about that part of things, more than just like what's coming up on the next episode.
Right. Yeah.
But I think he was exhausted because when I asked him the question, he was like, "You're very kind, Kate." And then he just started talking about the episode. And I was kind of like, what? So I felt weird. It just is weird. It's also weird when you're talking to somebody who's not in the same place and there's a delay and it's just, it feels a little bit odd. So I thought Keith Morrison is exhausted. So it felt a little bit weird. Like he was just kind of, a little low energy, I would say. But I just thought to myself, he's probably tired. He's been doing the same thing, talking about
4 hours,
for hours. And he's probably like jet lagged.
Over it. Yeah.
Everything else. So it's kind of like, ugh. But, if I ever had the opportunity to chat with him again, I would have that kind of, I think I would probably have the same conversation and ask him more about that.
Yeah.
Because you think now when Dateline started, it was sort of one of a few, and now true crime is just
everywhere. Yeah. I mean, it's been a big year for you in terms of getting some high profile interviews. You had Amy Poehler.
Yes. Which Amy Poehler was like I was so nervous and excited about that, because when we were starting Most Buffalo, I remember before that I had read her book, Yes Please. And so much of what she says in that book is a lot of, I realized she put into words how I feel about how I am,
right.
How I approach things. And I was like, yes, that's it. That's it.
You had one of the all-time best questions for Amy. If you were in court, what animal would you want as your lawyer?
Yes, that's one of my favorite questions to ask.
Who would defend you?
Who would defend? Oh, that's a good question. I think sometimes I think about an owl. I'd love him to be small, like a screech owl. So he just kind of is like, he's so little and he's just like sitting on the desk next to me and I'm just sitting there, because he seems like he would be wise. And I would enjoy too that if someone in the gallery said something, they can turn their heads all the way around.
Like, sir, no comments from the galley. Thank you.
I would enjoy that very much.
And that was good. I would probably do probably a walrus.
Okay.
Because they're.
I said that like, oh yeah, good answer.
Obviously.
That was just like my Family Feud self came out.
They can say very little yet command so much, right? Yes. Like a walrus has a presence of this guy's not. He's not effing
Here it
around.
comes.
He
Look at
brought,
this.
the walrus. Like, you know what? Case dismissed.
Like that's the animal, because you know how certain people, if they're accused of a crime, depending on the attorney they get, you're kind of like, oh, they are so guilty.
Having covered
That would be
court many
that would
times.
be the walrus, the animal kingdom version. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I mean, he's gonna get off, but wow.
Yeah.
Can't believe it.
Having covered court in Western New York many times, and just knowing the stock of attorneys, and I'm not naming any names, but like I've been in court going, this ain't gonna work out.
Yeah.
It's not gonna work out for this person.
It's interesting when you meet some of those people who have a very bombastic attitude in court and just in general. And then you meet them in person and they're very, kind, and you have a great, conversation. I've had that experience with a couple of different people. And then you realize sort of what the art of that kind of attorney is, which is you're so busy being like, this guy is a maniac, that you forget that they're defending someone who actually probably is, allegedly.
So yeah, walrus for me. Imagine that legal team: Owl and Walrus, PLLC.
I enjoy that very much. Yeah,
I'm just imagining the little owl like on the chair, and then judge talking to the owl. It just pops up on the desk.
I enjoyed that question there. So I have not, you can imagine, throughout my career, no one's ever been particularly interested in me being involved in anything that's very serious. But at one point in my career, they decided, well, you're the main anchor, so you should be involved in a political debate. I was like, okay. So we gather in.
I don't think you know what you signed up for, but okay.
I'm like, all right. So we gather in the conference room. We're talking about the questions that we're going to ask, and we get through some of the serious questions, and then there's always the lightning round, or the silly questions to throw them off. So I'm throwing out all of these things, and everyone's like, well, that's not blah blah blah. So the one that I got through, I said, let me ask them which Muppet they would be. And so they're like, why? I go, because there's the best answer. If you want to be the leader of anything, the answer is Kermit. It's the best answer, right? Yeah. So now in retrospect, I would ask this question: take Kermit out. Now which one? So we get this through. It's a race for the Troy, New York mayor. And so we're recording the episode, recording the debate, and we get to that part. And I ask the question, and the one guy, of course, says Kermit, which I'm like, yeah, killed it. No. The next contestant, he yells, he took mine, and then he panics and he goes, Fozzie!
Waka waka!
Which I was like, this tells you so much about this whole thing. It didn't matter what they had to say prior to any of that, because that revealed more, I would argue, than the rest of the debate.
Yeah. So-and-so says they would be Fozzie Bear. Can you trust them to run your city? Vote for...
Waka waka. I love he took mine. That was my favorite part.
He took the one Muppet I know of.
Oh. But I think it's fun to ask, like, coming up with those absurd kinds of questions. It's more fun than anything for me.
Yeah. I'm listening to you, but I'm also thinking of what Muppet I am.
I have many that I aspire to be. I like the guy, Lou Zealand. He's the one who throws fish. I like him. I like Uncle Deadly. Because Uncle Deadly started
doing deep cuts.
Yes. Well, that's the ones. Well, what I love about him is he was this like creepy, background monster. Yeah. And then he became like a fashion icon.
Right.
Which is awesome. Yeah. I mean, what a glow up.
Oh yeah. My my Twitter avatar is the anchor, the Muppet anchor.
Yes. Yeah. He always got eaten by alligators.
Oh, always.
So good. Something always happened to him.
Always. The guy's just trying to do his job, and something comes and F's up his day. Like it's just not right.
You know what? We would have never known it growing up, but he's so true to life.
Like, oh, I feel that.
Going on about your day, and
just
then
trying to read your copy, and then all of a sudden,
chaos.
All right, Kate, what are you watching? What are you reading? What are you doing? How's what's what are you doing to enjoy life? Anything fun?
Well, let me think. I'm trying to think of what I've been doing to enjoy life these days. I watched some random, not particularly, I'll tell you what. Okay. So I was watching Netflix and I was trying to find something to watch. And this is going to make me sound terrible. And I know it. Let me say that at the top. But I was watching something and I was like, oh, it's in German.
Right.
So I was like, oh, I'm like, I can't really pay. I'm like, the point of putting something on TV is so that you can ignore it and look at your phone, right? So if it's in German, what's the point of anything?
Yeah.
Oh, anyway, but yes, I've been trying more to encourage myself to do some writing. So I've been trying to entertain myself by doing that. But sometimes I just come home, try to watch something, lose interest immediately, and go to bed. So that's where I'm at these days.
I've been watching on HBO Painting with John Lurie.
Oh.
John Lurie is a musician, actor, kind of Renaissance man, kind of gig. I'm not advocating using any substances, but I imagine this is the type of show that would be even better on certain substances.
Nice.
But he said in episode 2, it's just like him painting and then telling life stories. It has this great story about how he met Barry White, and like Barry White was a fan of his jazz music, of John's music rather. And he's like, holy shit, like Barry White knows my music. Like, holy cow. Like,
that's awesome.
Barry White. But he had this one quote that I thought you would get a kick out of, in kind of a transition scene in the episode from the first act to second act. He goes, "It's important to have fun every day, a little bit of fun." And then he rolls a bunch of tires down a hill into the woods. It's like, but that's just such like a great thing that stuck with me, of just like, no matter what the day is bringing you, like, just, not to get all like, motivational podcaster here, but like, finding that little fun of the day and then doing some chaos to have that fun I thought that was pretty cool. But it's a really cool show. His art's very interesting. And he has some really great stories. So if you've got HBO, check that out.
I really like that.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds very good. I would definitely enjoy that for sure. And I absolutely appreciate the idea of a little bit of fun every day. I think it's vital.
Yeah. It's basically like painting with Bob Ross, but if Bob Ross cursed. So
I like that.
Yeah.
I feel like we can all get on board with that.
Absolutely. Which have you watched
all of it?
Have you watched any of the Bob Ross documentaries on Netflix?
No, but I've thought about it, and then I don't know. I haven't.
It doesn't really. The one on Netflix with his son in particular, where we talk about how Bob really had before he died and even after he died, like the estate had no control over his image, and like it doesn't paint Bob Ross in a negative light at all, but the corporation behind Bob Ross and kind of the apparatus that now you have, Bob Ross Halloween costumes and mugs and gimmicks and stuff. It's really interesting in looking into that whole aspect of things, and like how just this kind of machine was created by the success of a guy painting in a TV studio.
What a thing to aspire to. I would love to reach a level of fame where my estate completely ruins my image after my death.
Yeah.
And then Keith Morrison can talk about that in the third hour of my unprecedented Dateline special.
She was kind but naive with business affairs.
That's really that's very true.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure about the kind part, to be honest, but
right. Yeah.
Keith Morrison said it, so
it instantly validates anything if he says it.
Yes. Agreed.
Yeah. All right, Kate.
Nath, it's been a good time.
Kath, it's always a pleasure. We'll see you next time.
All right. So long.